Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you that don't know Kimber, this is Kimberlee Wells. She is the CEO of TBWA in Melbourne. So as an agency that's won some of the biggest awards, can you describe the impact that winning those awards has actually had on your business?
So the stats so far, when we kind of tally what we've done over the last few days, I think is 16 lions in 4 years, just on ANZ alone.
Wow.
Which is quite phenomenal in terms of the shift that has for a large bank. I think it probably puts them certainly in a category of their own. There's impacts on two sides of the business, so it's wonderful to see the clients rally around what that means, and it is quite meaningful to them. I mean, they recognise Cannes certainly as an international festival, so there's a lot of pride that comes with seeing that the work that they ingest a lot of blood, sweat and tears into is also recognised on a global stage. But I think for the agency, it's a really important cultural marker. You know, a lot of creative teams, planners, account people are recognised by the awards, and it becomes a really important metric in their own career progression. So it is important that we support the award shows, but it doesn't take away from the importance of actually supporting strong strategic rigour, really strong creativity and business impact. So, you know, between Cannes and Effies, they're the two shows that we really put a lot of emphasis on, but the main emphasis has to be on creativity that drives business impact and cultural impact for brands.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, ANZ, you've had some great work out on that, obviously with ATMs last year. And
yeah, I mean, it's the gift that keeps giving. We reinvent it every year, and every year I find myself at Mardi Gras with the ANZ team. And you know, now the team is sort of like starting to say, we're out, we're tapping out. There is absolutely no way you can keep up this run.
Beat it.
And somehow, you know, the teams, I think the reason we're able to do it is it's a really shared purpose between the agency and ANZ. We're really proud of that work, and really proud of the impact that has on starting to drive cultural change. Australia needs a huge mirror held up to it still. You know, I mean, there's still, we kind of think, oh, there's all of this acceptance out there because the Mardi Gras parade is growing year on year, but it's still not. When you look at the size of our country, there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and it's actually really interesting. Then you mentioned about the clients being invested in Cannes as an awards festival as well, which is great to hear, because I think there's an importance that agencies put on it, obviously because it attracts talent, it can bring in new business, but knowing that clients are passionate about an investment in you both winning an award is great.
Yeah, it's a wonderful time of year for the relationship.
Yeah.
First of all, if we have ANZ here, which we were fortunate last year, Louise Ayres was here, so she walked up on stage to collect a gold lion.
That's amazing.
Which is wonderful for them. But you just kind of see the camaraderie that gathers around it, and to get these pieces of work out, particularly around the LGBTIQ work that we do. We have challenged so many conventions of the bank, and that is not our doing. That is a joint venture between all of the people that are really invested in the creativity on ANZ's side as much as the agency, and you cannot get there without true partnership and true belief in big ideas.
Sort of maybe on the other side of that coin, yesterday here at Cannes we heard Publicis Group announce that they won't be entering any of their work in 2018 into any award show.
Yeah.
Maybe just get your thoughts on that as a CEO of an agency. What do you think of that move? Do you think that's the right thing to be doing, or maybe not? Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting. The first thing I went to when I read about that was, it's kind of like what happened with the International Motor Show in Australia, right? So it only took one to pull out, one key brand to pull out, and then all of a sudden all the other brands started to pull out. I hope that doesn't happen here. I think certainly TBWA as a creative collective is very, very invested in the awards, and very invested in Cannes in particular, and in the Effies. But at the same time, I sympathise with why Publicis may have chosen to do it. It's a really expensive exercise. The number of categories grows every year, which means you're kind of hedging bets.
Yeah.
And enough has to be enough at some point, and it's not just the international shows, it's also the local shows, and then it's not just the entry fees, it's the actual cost of investing in getting your work ready. I mean, it's a project in and of itself, and I see all the time just the level of investment that is required on behalf of the agency when we're on the lead up to any award show. It's quite staggering.
They're definitely going to have more time on their hands to focus on just doing work. but at the same time, they're probably losing some interest of creatives who, as you say, gauge themselves on ensuring that they are winning awards to further their career. I mean, if you're not going to win any, and you're not, you are kind of at risk, I think, of kind of like excluding yourself from the market.
I mean, culture is everything in a creative agency, and now that's not to say that awards create culture. Creativity has to be at the core of culture for all of these agencies, but if you haven't got the marker, you actually measure what you really care about, or you manage what you measure, I think is kind of the saying. So if you're not managing yourself and holding yourself accountable on a global stage to have that level of creativity, then how do you know?
How do you know? Yeah.
It's interesting that you kind of have those milestone moments in a campaign, one of which is getting it live and getting it out the door. And I think, you might have gone through the hardships of getting it there, but then it gets out. But certainly when something wins, it kind of really is the payoff for all that hard work.
That hard work, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even when it's nominated and shortlisted, you feel like, okay, you know what? We're not crazy. It was worth it. And if you don't have that, I'll just be interested to know what you get out of it sometimes.
And you want it, I mean, you want it so desperately for the team. I think, I certainly don't see the investment that we make as I'm not looking for the ROI on new business. I actually don't think it does that much for new business, but it does so much to build culture, and depending on how you merchandise it as well. So, we certainly use it as a reward and recognition by bringing young teams across so they can experience it for themselves. Paul Reardon, our Chief Creative Officer, has this wonderful saying of, if you're not sort of bringing young creative talent across, and a lot of agencies don't, a lot of agencies hold the physical experience of the festival more to their seniors. Yeah. But if you don't bring the young people across, it's just soldiers dying for their generals.
Yes.
Without knowing why. And the experience of being in the Palais and being down in where all the work is and being around just this immense creativity is invigorating, it's inspiring, and then you see the work when they get back. So I actually think that will be the bigger issue for publicists. I'd be really keen to just watch culturally what happens to the agency, whether or not their creative product drops. Overall. I'm sure there's probably an argument to say, no, it won't, because we're going to have the same people. But people get motivated by what's around them.
Yeah. And we were saying earlier, weren't we? It's like, awards exactly to that point are the benchmark, and junior teams that are trying to get their names are setting themselves against those benchmarks, and they need that to be able to get better salaries and other jobs.
That's right.
And when I don't know what it's going to mean for publicists, but I would have an assumption that there will be some more junior teams that are going to struggle, given that they can't then set that benchmark for themselves.
When we're looking at planners, it's still quite a conventional way, but one of the metrics that we use to help us understand how well they can construct business case and really look for the rigor through the data is whether or not they've written an FE. Same for creative, like have they won Lions? Are they capable of creating world-class work? And that's what the festival helps us kind of sorting the wood for the trees, I suppose.
So obviously we talk about that, the advertising model's changed, and I think it's changing the way that people are running agencies. You're obviously running a big agency. How are you getting to great creative work? Is there a formula for that, and what does it rely on if there is one?
Great creative work for me will always come back to the insight. So how strong can the insight be? And, it's the famous white page. Great creativity comes from just white page, restless pursuit of imagination, and it comes from a lot of energy. So I think, we were talking, I was talking to some of the team earlier today just about creativity that's just like everywhere inside you, it's kind of in your every waking moment. And one thing I've been grappling with a little bit is, has creativity become too much of a profession and not enough of a practice, a real discipline that gets us out of bed in the morning? And I haven't landed on that. I'm not exactly sure where I sit on that, but I think there's certainly evidence in agencies where there's maybe cohorts that are working more of it as a profession, because it kind of seems a bit kooky and a bit cool, but is it their lifeblood? What are the other things that they're doing? So.
We were speaking to Damon Stapleton this morning, actually, and he talked about that very similar topic as a process. And if someone at a junior age is convinced this is what they want to do and thinks they can do it sort of as a process, that's an indication for him that they need to maybe go explore other creative fields and other things, because you shouldn't just fall upon advertising and go, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a creative in advertising. You're a creative, and you've chosen to make money and express your creativity through advertising to earn money. Yeah. But for Damon, he came to it because he was broke, but he thinks that you should have sort of other ways of expressing yourself as a creative, and this is just one that kind of pays the bills.
I completely agree.
And if this is what you've set your mind on doing and studied to go do, maybe they need to do a bit more exploring.
Yeah, well, I think it's if it's what you've studied to do, it makes it a profession.
It's a very similar.
It's quite
point,
a linear
right?
thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like being a lawyer. You study to be a lawyer and you become a lawyer.
Practice law.
You study to be a creative, so you become a creative. But there are so many creatives that have never studied, and it's just naturally inherent. And I'm talking about creative thinkers, not just creative in the in the true kind of departmental sense of the word, I suppose. I met this incredible Frenchman whose name I can't pronounce, so I'm not going to try. But I met him a couple of days ago in Paris, and we went into his apartment, and he's 70 years old now, and he was a fashion designer to begin with, but just the energy that came from him, and he is so restless. He's so restless to find new ways to apply his creativity. Yeah. He started with designing like jeans, he's moved into fragrance, he's done Beyonce shoes, he's done clothing for Lady Gaga, and
oozes creativity.
But he's so humble. Yeah. There's no ego. So I think that's another really important consideration in all of this, is that I think that's where creativity is shifting as well, because the room that we used to have at the table for big egos and kind of the rock star that was the big creative person that kind of carried all of the business is just not there. Clients don't want to work like that, and agencies can't work like that.
We are definitely seeing a trend of creative people being hired by other companies.
Yes, we are.
Not creative agencies, right? I mean, certainly tech companies are hiring from within the industry, but so are media agencies, and they have for a long time. And now I think even more so a trend in sort of managing consulting firms that are starting to hire traditional creative people, I suppose. Do you think that role of a creative can exist outside of a creative agency and succeed, I suppose? Or are these companies not set up to sort of harvest and foster creativity?
So I would ask a question back to you in response to that, and that would be, would direct marketers set up for success 20 years ago in creative agencies? No, they weren't. Yeah. They were parked in the corner because they were of an ilk that didn't fit
with the agency.
So that's right. It's kind of the body rejects the organ. I think I admire the pursuit, but my hope for our industry is that culturally, I think it will take them a long time to get there, and it's not about. I look at our premises at the moment, and it's not about billiard tables and fancy swanky chairs and all that kind of stuff. That's not what we have yet. We've had some remarkable creativity come out, and it's the culture. It's the culture of understanding what it takes to bubble creativity to the surface. Paul, who I mentioned earlier, he and I talk about it all the time. He's my creative partner, and the reason that he's my creative partner is as much for the creative product that he produces as the creative sounding board that he brings to some really big strategic decisions that I have to make, but also vice versa.
Yeah.
That's a really unique partnership. You don't get that everywhere, and I think that is where creatives in industries that have traditionally been suit and tie are going to struggle, because it will be forced.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, when you kind of give to junior people in an organisation the task of building culture for the business, or worse still, the management team decides that they're going to create the culture for the business. You can't. It just has to naturally exist, and I think there will be a rejection at some point. I think they'll continue trying. I think what Accenture's doing is interesting in terms of not trying to build it themselves, but just going outwards and saying, we've got a checkbook and we're going to start buying. I think that model is possibly more likely to work. But I even worry for outside of some of the tech companies. I worry for some of the creative agencies that are trying to bolt on data capability on the side. I don't think they can do it, and the reason I say that is for years I was the data geek that sat in the corner of big traditional creative agencies, and just culturally there was, you know, a lot of kind of rejection and misalignment. So unless there is passion and room for creativity to exist, I don't think it will.
I think a lot of the companies that maybe are pursuing this journey as well aren't quite aware of how difficult it is to be the full-time creative partner of a brand. I think that, you know, project basis, maybe they get something up and think, oh, we should hire more creative people to do more things with them. But, you know, when you are the
retained agency,
if you are the, you know, the sort of brand ambassador or the people that have to kind of be there thick and thin, that's a very difficult task and role to kind of always be managing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's too clear, I guess.
The consideration for us in the whole debate generally is that, and certainly from the consultant's perspective, it's probably easier, well it is, it's easier for them to go down than it is for us to go up. You know, agencies haven't traditionally played in the C-suite.
Yeah.
So we've got to up our game, there's absolutely no doubt. But I think so much focus is on these sorts of companies are coming in. They also have their own challenges. And so as an industry, we have to keep looking out and keep looking over the horizon and keep reinventing ourselves, because it's what agencies have always been great at. And the other thing, you know, that I would say to that, and I've said this to a number of clients and industry colleagues when they say, oh, you know, it's doom and gloom in the industry, it's a terrible time to be in it. My response to that always is, I actually think it's a really terrible time to be a client. And the reason for that is there's so many people now coming directly to them, direct to their door. And if they're not using their agencies in the way that they used to, then they're having to try and reconcile 10 different ideas to solve exactly the same problem. Whereas agencies have a legacy in being able to really distill a lot of different perspectives. And so, you know, if you let the wolves at your door, the wolves will eat you. So I think, you know, it's kind of a message back to clients as well to say, just be really conscious of exactly how far open you're kind of leaving yourselves.
And Kimber, you and I have talked about this. I obviously look after the relationship with TBWA.
Beautifully.
I think we're starting to see more collaboration and we're doing more stuff together. But what do you as a CEO, you know, what would you as a CEO of TBWA in Melbourne look to Google for creatively? What is it you'd love to see from us as a partnership?
I mean, innovation is critical, right? Innovation is critical to our business. It's clearly a lead indicator for Google and your business. I think that where the support has been to date, certainly in the training and in the kind of on the fly as we're speeding down a highway and having someone like you at the end of the phone to take those calls and help give us some direction is really important. But it's certainly in the innovation space. I think that you know, there's room for all of us, and partnership is something that we are so focused on. And it's not a lip service, you know, for TBWA Melbourne, by no means. I mean, we're very clear on what our capabilities are, and so the more people we can partner with to get better results for our clients, then great, everyone's welcome.
We are obviously seeing trends in sort of what's coming through on the media plan. That is getting ever more diverse. And I think all of these platforms and even new platforms that are coming into play are always talking about having bespoke work made for their particular assets, right? So whether that be us as YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or anyone else. Do you think that's changing how you are being briefed by your clients? Or are you internalizing that and actually changing how you're briefing your people? Is it making it more difficult to land one particular idea?
I don't think it makes it more difficult to land one idea, because I think the requirement for creativity always has to start with a central thought.
Yeah.
So I don't think it has an impact on that. It has a huge impact on ability to turn around at the speed with which our clients demand evidence of stretch. So when we have to say, yes, it's going to work on YouTube in this way, and yes, it's going to go across in search in this way, and then, you know, on blah, 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 this way. And at what point you actually evidence that is really hard, because some of them want it up front.
With the big idea.
With the big idea. Yeah. And until you've really got that big idea over the line, proving it out across all of those different disciplines is
costly.
it's
Time
just
consuming, yeah.
and soul destroying, you know, and then you put a lot of time in and then all of a sudden that's not the right idea. And I think the other challenge is the big idea often comes with show me 2, show me 3, show me 4, and it's still not quite right, show me 5. So the cumulative impact of that in terms of resource is really significant. So I don't think it's changing creative. It does definitely have an impact on the way we brief. Because what we need to be looking for is the really unique insights for what is happening across each of those channels. And again, I think that's where the partnership is really important to help us surface. Your knowledge of YouTube is far greater than it will ever be in the agency. So to be able to work together and say, what can you bring? This is the business problem. What insights can you bring to that? And therefore, how is that likely to spill over into the creative product that we're developing? And then we'll produce the creative and get feedback, you know, throughout the process. I think that's where it impacts creative.
Kimberlee Wells, thank you so much for joining us in sunny Cannes today. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Likewise. Au revoir.